If you're a government employee and you are thinking about the early retirement plan, stop. Before you move forward with your decision, it's important for you to consider a number of elements. Now, this is not to dissuade you and move you towards either retirement or resignation, but this is to help you to understand exactly how to compare the options that have been provided by the early retirement plan so that you can make the most important decision for you. My name is Dhevan Naicker. I am a retire versus resign specialist, and I assist exclusively with helping government employees make their most important financial decision of their careers. Now, what's critically important is that a number of members have been reaching out to me for assistance on the early retirement plan. Is it the right thing to do? Is it the right time to leave? And a lot of them have a lot of misconceptions or just information that hasn't been presented transparently for you. Now, if you're in that position wanting to understand what's the best route and how do you move forward from here, then this video is exactly for you. Now, stay tuned towards the end because I'm going to be covering 5 key elements for you. You would notice also that I don't have my production team here. My voice is a little sore because I've been recovering from a bit of flu. And I don't have the fancy crew or the fancy cutscenes, but I think it's important to produce the video nonetheless so that you have the information that you need to make the best informed decisions. So there are 5 areas we'll be discussing in the video today. And the first of which is trying to get an understanding whether you qualify for the benefit, right? Like we know that it's been tabled out there. You want to see, hey, do you actually qualify for the early retirement? Easy one for this because you can start to reach out to your HR. They can provide you with the terms and conditions, and you assess it based on your age and based on your sector. Again, that will help you to understand whether you do actually qualify or whether it's outside of your the area that they are looking for, the criteria. Now, if you do qualify, before you submit the application, you want to again watch the video, understand certain other elements before you make a commitment. Because once you apply for it, then there seems to be no way of getting back, right? Once it's applied and it's approved, from having a look at the terms and conditions, looks like you're pretty committed in it. So you want to do your homework before you move forward. Then the next thing is to understand your benefits. Now, what are the benefits? Basically, what is being proposed, and again, you need to make sure that you get it in writing because your years of service might be different. Let's assume you're not yet at 60. Let's say in my example, you are, I'll just say 57. Your retirement benefits are already projected up to 60. So usually if you are 57, and you are leaving a bit earlier, this is where you would have a penalty, right? Because the benefits that you see on your pension statement, it's forward projected to 60. And because you're leaving at 57, 3 years earlier, before the actual retirement age, then there's a penalty, right? Same would apply for, let's say you are past 60, right? Let's assume you are now 61, then your pension benefits have now been calculated up to 65, meaning it's an inflated value. So usually you would have a penalty that reduces the value because you are coming a bit earlier. What the early retirement benefit is saying is there's no penalties, right? Where you would normally have had the penalty, there's now no penalties. Does it mean that this is going to be incredibly great and definitely something that you have to consider? Well, let's start to look at the other areas before you make that decision. Because again, once you decide, there's no going back. And it brings me actually to, I believe, one of the most important things to consider. Last week, I sat with a deputy principal who was very, very keen on going ahead with this. But the moment we went into the tax calculation, he started to see this in a completely unique way. So let's start to understand the tax. And as usual, you don't need to know about tax. You don't have to understand it. I'll show you how to do the calculations even. But we want to understand, hey, look, what exactly are the benefits that you'll be getting if it was approved? And we know already you would be receiving your lump sum gratuity. And to make it easy, you can pull off figures from your pension benefit. I'm going to be putting calculations together, right? So I'll make an assumption that the lump sum gratuity is 1.5 million. And in addition to that, you would also be getting a package. And the package is for, depending on your years of service, it could be a week, 2 weeks, but it's an extra amount, right? This is what the early retirement. So over and above, it's a lump sum that's going to be paid to you, which in my example, I'm going to call it 500,000. Just again, we're making math to look very easy. In addition to that, know that you would also qualify for your pension benefits. This is basically a monthly pension income. which again, in my example, I want to make the math look easy. Let's call it 25,000. And then in addition, you would qualify for your annual leave, any payments that's going to be made to you. And let's assume that you have some cap leave as well. Now, if you don't have cap leave, that's perfectly fine. Then you can ignore this section. But if you do have cap leave, I just want to add it in. And we'll put some figures together again, just to make the math easy. Say your annual leave, we'll call it 30,000. And on cap leave, let's make it 100,000. So now we have all our figures together. Let's start to understand how SARS sees this from a tax perspective. And then I'll help you to do the calculations. Now we're starting off on the left-hand side here with your lump sum gratuity. We notice that the figure is 1.5 million. And SARS uses the tax table, which I'll bring up on the screen for you in order to run the calculation. Now keep in mind when we're doing this, you want to make sure that you're using the recent tax guide. I'm using the one that was available at the time of us producing the video. And if you are planning the exit, chances are this is the one that you'll use to calculate as well. So at the top here, we see retirement fund lump sum benefits or severance benefits. And we can see here, the gratuity lump sum will be taxed according to this particular table. And notice we have a figure of 1.5 million. It's more than 550,000. The 1.5 million is more than 770. It's also more than 1,155,000, which means, assume this was your value, then SARS is now going to tax you at the highest rate possible, right? Which they are saying, hey, there's two legs to the formula. First, they want 143,550. First part. Second, they are saying whatever is above 1,155,000, they want to exit 36%. Now I'll do the tax calculation for you, but before we get started into that, I want you to see two pieces of fine print, right? The first is in terms of the severance benefit. The severance benefits. Now remember we discussed earlier about the package being 500,000. We'll quickly go back there so that you can see. This is over and above, it's a separate lump sum, right? Now to you and I, the lump sum gratuity has nothing to do with the package value, right? They're two completely different amounts. But the way in which SARS has put this together, they are actually going to add it because the package amount is going to be seen as a severance benefit. So we would then have to do the calculation the way that SARS would see it, meaning it's the lump sum gratuity plus the package amount, which means a total here of 2 million. Okay, now again, you follow along using the examples I'm giving you to make it easier. And then you can always, if need be, you can book a consultation. I'll do the calculations for you, or otherwise run the calculations like I'm showing it, right? Because you can use your figures. Now let's head back to the tax guide. We would then do a tax calculation on 2 million. But before we do that, again, we want to have a look at the fine print, right? Because notice that when SARS is running the calculation, they are saying, hey, a lump sum retirement fund lump sum benefit could consist of money that's coming from a pension fund, which is one that you're part of, a preservation fund, provident fund, or a retirement annuity. Now, I had this issue with someone from SAPS, also wanting to leave, but had accessed some money from a retirement annuity. Again, it has nothing to do with the pension fund. It has nothing to do with the package deal. But SARS doesn't see it that way. So if we look further along on the fine print, if you have taken out any money from a retirement annuity after October 2007, SARS is going to add everything up. So now you'd have a third value, right? You'd now have the lump sum gratuity plus your package deal, which means there are more factors for you to consider, right? Not very, very straightforward. Again, it's important for you to get good advice when you're going through this. Let's assume in our case, we're just going to work with the two figures, which is the 2 million rand, right? It's the 1.5 plus this. I'm now bring up a calculator. I'll do the calculation for you so you don't have to be concerned. We're looking at 1.5 million, which was the lump sum gratuity, plus 500,000, which we are saying is the package amount. So the total taxable amount from sum is 2 million. Now I'm going to minus 1,155,000 based on the SARS tax table. Any amount that is surplus, this figure here, will be taxed at 36%. That's this amount. And in addition to that, they want 143,550. If you need to, pause the video, head back, have a look at the tax table so you see how I ran the calculation. This says, hey, 447,750 is what SARS would deduct from a tax perspective. So let's head back here. Tax here is 447,750. Now, this is where I had a gentleman reaching out to me to say, hey, Dhevan, hold on. I had started work before 1998. He said to me he started in 1990, and 1998 is when there was a tax law. So if you had started before 1998, then you too have an extra tax-free portion, right? In the case of this gentleman, he had 8 years and all this money was tax-free. So he said to me, hey, listen, that money is tax-free, so I've got an extra portion, which in theory, right, in principle, everything of being above board, yes, you are entitled to that money if you started before 1998, you've got an extra tax-free portion. The challenge is the money is currently sitting with the pension fund. So the pension fund is running the calculation. Now, there is a challenge because a lot of members are saying there's not a lot of a lot of transparency. They're not able to get the exact pre-98 value. So if you can't get your exact pre-98 value, how would you know that was used in the calculation? I'll give you an example. Let's say you got your exact pre-98 value. You know your pre-98 value is 500,000, right? In my example. Then the tax calculation here would be shifted because you'll end up paying less in tax because now you have an extra tax-free amount. You agree? Now, if you were able to get access to that value and you had something in writing, and let's say your tax dropped, right? It wasn't 447. You knew, hey, the tax that you would pay is only 250,000. If you have something in writing, you can go back to the pension fund, you can lodge a complaint and have it rectified. But if you don't have the stuff in writing, then it's a problem because you have to then just pay the tax amount. You won't really know whether the pre-98 value was taken into account. And if it was taken into account, you don't really know to what extent, right? Like how much of it was taken into account. Keep in mind, there's a gray area because now the pre-98 value will be calculated on which amount, because it can't be calculated on your package value because you haven't yet worked those years, right? So you've got a lot of things to consider before making the decision. And let's face it, 447,000 in this tax calculation is R500,000 almost. It's a significant amount of money. Would you agree? Yeah. So you want to start to have a look at, hey, what are ways in which you can adjust that so that we reduce the tax? Then the same type of structure would apply, different tax way of calculating though, on your monthly pension. Your monthly pension would be added to your annual leave and would be added to cap leave. So in essence, SARS is taxing on a total value. Everything added up, all of this is what becomes taxable. And then I'll show you the tax table so you can have a look at, see how it works, right? Now, tax on the income is a little different. I'm going to scroll up on the tax guide to bring that for you. See, this is for individuals. Now, notice how this works. It's again a sliding scale. The higher your income, the more the tax, right? So starting off at 18, then jumping to 26 to 31 to 36. So the challenge is once you factor your monthly pension, whatever that works out to for the year, then you add your annual income, then you add the cap leave. For this gentleman, it actually pushed him up 2 levels of tax. 2 levels of tax, right? He was sitting closer to 41%. So initially he was starting at 36. He's now pushed to 41%. So everything is taxed at a higher rate. Now you want to do this homework upfront just so that you are aware, right? What you don't want to have happen is you sign into something and then you're not sure which route to go. Again, this is not saying retiring is better or resigning is better. This is more about information and understanding your options so that when you are committed into something, you know you've done your homework and it's the best route for you. So on the tax side, it can get quite intricate. Best thing to do is to get some type of advice from a specialist. You can always reach out to book a consultation so that you know the stuff is being done properly ahead of time, right? Then you want to create an action plan. Once you understand this, you want to look at, hey, how can you take control of your money so that you can pay the least tax possible if it's important for you? You can start to create a bit of a legacy, right? But if you are aiming at retiring, how can you make the retirement the best retirement possible? Or if it's a resignation, how can you make the resignation the best resignation possible? Now, keep in mind on the resignation side, you cannot actually apply for early retirement and then say you want to resign, right? It's one or the other, because early retirement means you are in essence retiring. On the resignation side, very quickly, if it's planned well, there are certain opportunities that could take place from a tax saving that might be beneficial. So initially you have your capital here sitting with the pension fund. Let's put the capital at, let's say 6 million in my example. If you had to take everything in cash, this is where you pay a significant amount in tax, right? Now, again, not saying that you have to go this route, but important for you to understand the differences of the two. Your alternate is you could transfer it here into an approved fund, which now we have created what we call the perfect approved fund, right? Pardon me, let me erase this. So let's say it's into what we call the perfect approved fund. When that move happens, this is how you are able to pay zero tax, especially when it's done correctly. So notice that's you saving a huge amount of money. Then you have a portion of money that could be accessed here, which is what I call a true 1/3, right? It's basically the resignation value divided by 3. In this case, it's 6 million divided by 3, which is 2 million. Now that figure is a taxable amount, which means here you would be paying tax on it. However, there's two things you can use to your advantage. We know how to calculate the exact pre-98 value. So let's say I could show you how to calculate that exact amount, and all that you took out was your tax-free portion. Then you could eliminate the tax. Making sense? On the YouTube channel, I've got a lot of testimonials of members that have been able to do this for. And then keep in mind, when you do this correctly, you don't have to take your true 1/3. It could be up to, right? And knowing also that the balance of money that flows here, which is now your 2/3, any money that you transfer there, you would have zero tax. That money that's in the 2/3 would be invested to provide you with an income. That income is taxable. Now, if you have a look, we've got a number of ways in which you can save tax, right? Instead of taking cash, you can transfer, you save tax. Here, instead of tax getting paid, we use pre-98, we use the up to value to adjust it, transfer any money that would have been taxed over to zero tax. And there's even ways in which we can adjust the tax there. So again, not promoting the resignation, but promoting the education behind it. Are there cases where the early retirement would be beneficial, more beneficial? Yes. So I've had cases last week with an SAPS member, really wanted to resign, really wanted to take control of his capital. I could show him a number of tax savings, but based on the personal circumstances, it was tricky because he's got 2 members in his family with disability, and it wouldn't have been appropriate for them to head into something outside of the comfort zone because they were already used to the medical aid and they were comfortable with it. And in addition to that, there were no liquidity in the estate, right? So in that case, I could see, hey, look, there's no savings that was sitting inside there. There was an issue because there was some previous money that was withdrawn from retirement annuities, which would have triggered more tax consequences, right? Then we had the medical aid issue for his family members. In addition to that, he had dependents. So beyond him having to structure just things for himself, he still had adult dependents that were relying on him. So I could see, hey, look, there is a discipline issue. If money becomes available and they save the tax, they'll have enough to be able to settle the debt. But the problem is it's a very, very thin margin. And if something breaks, if you didn't follow the advice to the T, it's an issue. And then that could result in a problem because he has a lot of control over his capital. And if he's not managing it well, it's an issue. On the flip side, I had a lady who had traveled to me quite like about 6 hours to reach out from the Department of Education. In her case, the situation is very different because she had no debts in place. There's no bonds, no credit cards, no overdrafts, no loans. She had a significant amount of money that was sitting in savings. She had a big tax problem, which we could resolve, right, with tax planning, like how I've shown you. So in a case like her, there's no discipline issue. It made sense on the resignation because she could manage her finance a lot better. She could take control. I know we could even grow the capital, right? Make it to become even better than what we had initially planned. So there's no hard and fast rule that one has to retire, one has to resign. It's very much dependent on your personal set of circumstances. But I think critically important for you to understand all the elements. And this is why I put the 5th thing here, right? On either route, retiring or resigning, now we're talking about the early retirement plan. You want to ask yourself this question: what could go wrong? Because human nature, when we're having a look at something, everything seems to be working out well, right? You're still able to retain your pension subsidy. You're still able to retain your monthly income. You're able to get a lump sum. You're able to get your lump sum gratuity. You don't have to work. You don't have the stress situation that you're having to deal with, especially if you're going through quite a trying time. So everything's ticking the box, right? But I want you to ask yourself, hey, what could go wrong? Because that's where we start to think differently, right? We take the emotion out of it and we start to make the decisions using data, right? Using facts and figures. And then you shift the perspective a lot, right? Again, consulting with advisors, consulting with experienced retired versus retirement planners, reaching out to me, that then puts the perspective on it very differently. And even if it's just a tax calculation or you're getting to bounce your idea off, what you don't want to do is make a commitment that's as big as this without getting some grounding, proper information, really spending time to understand the situation and asking the uncomfortable questions, right? What could go wrong? Especially if you look at it and everything seems above board, you got to ask yourself, hey, what could go wrong? I hope the video has been helpful for you. Please, I want to encourage you, which I have on previous occasions, share the video amongst friends, colleagues, especially if you know that they are above 55, they might be leaning towards a retirement plan. Let's start to stand together as a community so that together, right, one person winning, you winning, everybody could be winning from information, right? And the information is free. So let's make sure that we pass it along and do the best that we can possible for all members within the firm. And I'll catch you in the next video.